Don't put your yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast, distributed under the Real Agriculture Media Network and powered by the Hebert Group of Companies. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So I'm not going to lie, I've been looking forward to this one, Hebes. So we got Kent Fraser, and that your chat GPT says Vice President at Stratus Ag Research. So I'll let you correct that if you want, but give me a little bit of your background, Kent, and what Stratus Ag Research is, and then Hebes, I'm going to get you to jump in of why the collaboration on this project. So,
ChatGPT. The first time I used ChatGPT, it said I was the owner of the company.
oh wow, we're going down then.
Yes, I'm a vice president at Stratus. Stratus is a company that works entirely in agriculture. What we do is talk to and interview, do surveys with farmers and sometimes retailers and others around North America, especially in Canada. We're a Canadian company. I've been working in the ag industry for my whole adult life, with a good stint in one of the big crop protection companies and marketing there, and been with Stratus for 20 some years now. So we survey thousands of farmers a year on all kinds of topics, and but we always need more, by the way. So if any farmers are interested in doing our surveys, please go to stratusresearch.com and sign up.
Perfect. So today we're going to get into some of exactly what he said, the data and some of the questionnaires and other things that farmers producers had gotten back to us on. But Hebes, why the collaboration with Stratus? And I'm going to go into the PowerPoint and we'll go through some of the stats, but I need to know why you did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of twofold. One was, as we do more and more survey stuff at Farmer Coach, right? Some of the answers surprise us, and some don't surprise us, some do. So it's to better understand the group of people you're getting the questions from, and then, you know, I'll beat this drum again, and we'll get thrown under the bus after the podcast. But I mean,
you will.
I wanted to know what people with $1 million of revenue or more thought, and let's caveat this. I just did math at $700 an acre revenue on a dry land farm in Saskatchewan. That's 1,428 acres and bigger. It's not like we're talking 300,000 acre farms. We're just saying $1 million in revenue, so they probably farm full time. And I wanted to know the answers from that group, because those concerns tend to be, you know, different than probably the really, really big guys and the really, really small guys. And I also think that's where ag policy should be focused. Is we're so focused on this getting 2% more in productivity gains and it's worth $30 billion. Well, that's the group I think is going to get it for us. You know, $1 million in revenue and higher. So that was one of the main reasons. I just wanted to see how that answer set came back and have some control on what we were going to ask for questions, right? Like, I think it's different maybe what, as consultants or as farmers, we'd like to know what everybody's thinking versus what the government wants or the big life science company wants, who tend to do the surveys. So to tailor the questions around education and around policy and about what won't let you sleep at night. That was really the drive behind the collaboration. And Kent, you like throw your 2 cents in there.
Well, I like what you said about farm size. You know, there's 18 or 19,000 farms in that category in Canada, which may not sound like a lot. You know, it's 4,500 farms in Saskatchewan fall into that group. As you say, it's not an exclusive club by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. So we won't read all this, but, you know, we surveyed 417 farmers across Canada that followed that in that category, and it was a pretty short survey that people did.
The interesting one to me, he was just quickly on this one, was the Saskatchewan. I mean, 24%, it had the highest amount A, that got back to us, but B, of the actual number of farms over that million. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't. I mean, we have the most acres, right? And so if Ontario had more acres, but I mean, I see they're right up there too, because they have some higher value crops that allow you to hit $1 million in revenue quicker. So that, in my mind, that's why Ontario can have numbers similar to Saskatchewan. It's just that if you're a corn bean guy in Ontario, just their gross production so much bigger, right? And then they have some of the specialty crops that you got to remember, like the right 20-acre greenhouse berry farm in Ontario is over $1 million in revenue, right? It's not, we automatically think acres because we're from Saskatchewan. Same with people from Montana, but you get into Illinois, Iowa, or you get into Ontario and they hear a farm that's 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000. They're just like, you guys are crazy, right? But we also have to remember that a 1,000-acre farm in Iowa is crushing out $5-6 million in revenue. So that's why I like using revenue as the driver of farm size, right? Is that like there's some small greenhouses that do crazy amounts of revenue and big margin, and that's kind of shows that Ontario, Saskatchewan.
Well, and dairy's in there as well, for example.
Yep.
So you look at Quebec, almost 2,900 farms. A lot of that's going to be dairy. But you're right. Too often, I see people focusing on farm size. Even within Western Canada, if you do it on acres, it can be distorting because someone can be a very successful high revenue farm in Manitoba with a much smaller acre than someone in southwestern Saskatchewan, right? So sometimes acres is more a function of where you are than how really successful or big you are.
Yeah. No, perfect. Okay. Well, I want to jump right in because, like I said, I'm excited for this one. So first question we had was essentially rank the following risks for the 25 crop year. And what was the biggest risk to be ranked first? Did it surprise you volatile commodity markets is number one? Based on the Dow Jones yesterday?
Yeah. Were we allowed to put in there that volatile commodity markets based on Trump and an ungoverned Canada? It caused that risk, but yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me. Just the yo-yo. I mean, you look at it was about a month ago now that the Chinese tariffs were put in, right? Which was a bigger blow to the commodity market than Trump, and it took till yesterday for the canola market to get basically back to par on that 30-day scare, right? And the funny thing is the scare wasn't even real, right? Chinese put tariffs on mainly on oil, and they don't buy any oil from us really. The U.S. buys it all, but it's it's all the
perception.
It's sell the rumor, buy the fact. That's the way the market works, and that's the way media works. And I still think the chaos is still costing canola farmers somewhere between $70 and $100 a ton, right? The pure S&D, the canola market should be well over $700 right now. And so this volatility is shaving a lot off that market right now.
So if you're doing projections right now, Hebes, what are you putting in for canola price?
These ones get recorded and then I can get called on this. I think $700 a ton is in the cards for between Nov and March. Now, my caveat to that is, and Evan hears me say this all the time, I don't believe we have a tariff or a Chinese problem right now. We have a timing problem. There's volatile stuff happening all the time. Now, the speed of that is increased because of the way media moves through our world and the chaos of leadership. But, the canola tariff wasn't an issue if you didn't need to sell any canola in this 30 days. It was if you needed to sell the canola. So the timing of that 700 is the caveat I'll put on it.
The part I probably liked better was that policy was at the bottom, not at the top. So it means that guys are more focused on what they can actually control, which is some of the commodity side, rather than, if you look at our government side and their polls right now, the number one concern of the election is Trump. Well, you don't affect Trump. That's not like, let's worry about our own country versus that. Well, it's the same in the farming side. Is for a month and a half, all I heard was Trump and tariffs. And now I'm actually having, okay, the commodity markets are actually the risk. So now what are we doing, right?
Well, the way this slide goes, it's not really a sales pitch, but why did we create Maverick Ag?
Oh, yeah.
To make a plan for the controllables. Well, hedging and marketing is a way to manage volatile commodity markets. You're not going to be perfect. Environmental factors, drought and or weather, we've always said have a risk management plan that lets you go to sleep at night, right? Don't buy an insurance product because that's what you bought last year, or because you like it's $8 an acre. Buy it because it limits your loss to 100,000, 500,000, a million, whatever that number is that you're comfortable with, right? That's what a risk management plan is. And so then you start working your way down the controllable to the uncontrollable. And it's, for most guys, I would say that there's a fair bit you can do to control the top two, which is a good thing.
Quick question for you, Kent, and I'm not sure you can answer it or not. Does this change based on provinces? Was there
a little bit? There's the environmental factors are a bigger deal on the prairies.
Okay.
There's a lot more to come back, right? So, and it's one of the things I saw across the study is that I was surprised at how few differences there are across groups of farmers. So they answer, it's not to say they answer the same. As we see here, there can be a lot of difference in attitudes, but this picture looks not that different as you go from $1 million farms to $5 million farms, or those with lots of employees, or age or gender. It doesn't change very much. But often we see differences because of geography.
Okay.
Ontario is different from Saskatchewan, for example.
But and that makes sense to me, right? Shout, once you get over $1 million, it really starts turning into a business, not a lifestyle, right? And so whether you're running $1 million or 50 million, like we always joke, like it kind of just turns into math, right? If I'm 8,000 acres, so call it $5 million versus 16,000 at 10 million of revenue, that's just one extra drill and 4 extra people, and it turns into a system, right? That it's not as emotionally charged because it's turned into a system.
Well, and the risk factors, they don't change because it's based on a per acre for most guys. So it just grows, especially on the prairie side with the acre increase. It just comes with different exposures.
Alberta farmers were especially concerned about weather, the environmental stuff this year.
They should be after the last few years, I would say.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Number 2, rank the importance of the following to the next generation being able to succeed in farming. Number 1, access to land, scale to the optimal size. Does that surprise you? Does that surprise me is that was number 1?
Yeah. So it doesn't, it's kind of funny, right? Because we take a fair bit of heat over this. I take a fair bit of heat over this $1 million revenue idea. And the number one concern is, can I get bigger out of all these survey people? So it kind of shows there's a little bit of truth to the story. But I would argue that access to land, right? There's areas where things are just landlocked. Number one, things don't trade. The other thing is that it's really hard to just buy a quarter or half section anymore. It's 10 or 20 or 30 quarters at a time. And that's a big dollar number. So it's not only just the access to land, it's the access to capital to buy that land. And then can you pay it off? Right? Because, I'm a huge fan of land, but it takes a lot of cash to buy land. So yeah, I would say point 1 and point 3, they might not have always put it together in their head, but it's really the same thing. Because if you get a 15 quarter or 20 quarter package and you need to come up with that kind of money in a hurry, it really is an access to capital and the ability to pay for it as you want to scale.
Yeah. So for those listening, number 3 was access to capital. Number 2 is succession and transition. So on the access to land and access to capital side, I'm not surprised. Like, it surprises me that there was that order, but I went back to the same thing you said, is we get a lot of flack for consolidation, yet it's the number one thing young farmers are looking for. The other side of it is, and I get their side of the big farms are making it harder, and that's a valid opinion. But again, the access to capital side being number 3 tells me that guys have money right now, or they believe they've got the leverage that they could expand, maybe not, like you said, buy a full farm, but they have the ability to do it. It's just like you said, it's a competitive market. Guys are still buying. We just saw another 13% increase in land values through the FCC surveys, especially in Saskatchewan, sorry. But it's happening, and that, I mean, the proof is right here. And I don't think this one differs very much from the under $1 million when you start looking at the whole group.
No difference. The difference that jumps out really is that access to capital is much, by far the number one risk factor in Ontario, Quebec, or outside the prairies, let's say.
Yeah, and I think the big thing there is, right, I mean, I got good buddies in Ontario. Like, it's $20,000 to $25,000 an acre versus call it 3,000 to 6,000 in Saskatchewan. And we think that's overpriced in some areas. So it's and I think the reason it doesn't get higher, partly it is yeah, it's been a good 10 years, but I sometimes think when we're looking at scaling, we're like, oh, okay, we need 6 quarters. It's going to put us to the perfect spot. Yeah, but if the guy wants to sell 20 and he wants to sell it in one block, you don't get to have that conversation. So now all of a sudden access to capital is your issue. And that's why we kind of always say that pre-planning for how many acres you could take on at once so that it's an easy answer on having that discussion.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm starting to see farms actually start collaborating with neighbors instead of being competitors. So I know a recent land sale, 2 farms went together because the whole parcel was too big for one of them, and they split the parcel, but it made it easier to purchase. So, I mean, guys, I think that collaboration side is starting to change, where it used to be everybody was a competitor and now you're starting to work together.
Yep.
The other side, the succession transition being number 2, are we ever going to make this go away? I mean, Hebes, it's been here for 20 years. So why is this not moving? I mean, we have a million succession experts out there. Why is this still where it is? And I'm just going to call it out.
Well, I think there's 2 pieces. Point number 1 is if you don't make enough money, you don't have a succession problem. You have a business problem.
But we're over $1 million.
Pardon?
But we're over $1 million here.
Yeah, but once again, let's use $1 million of revenue. Average EBITDA on that would be 16 to 25%. So let's use 20. That's $200,000. If you want 2 families and 3 grandkids to live off that in Canada right now, you barely have enough money. You definitely don't have enough money to go buy more land.
Okay, but
let's
say that's the bottom. We're moving up from there. So now we're in areas where they can do this. Why is this still such an issue?
Well, the second piece is that what's I would assume in this question, everyone assumes that succession and transition is onto a family member. And the reason consolidation is happening is because family members don't always want to come back. Right? So now, is that a failed succession or transition? If you move it on to, I mean, like we've talked about it, if my kids don't want it, I want the team to run it. Right? So I think we're also starting to see some new ways to do it. But part of it is just as consolidation happens, that's not the option that the kids want. They maybe just want the investment or the land or to go be an engineer and not farm. So I don't know if that's next. Sometimes it's a dream of the older generation, and obviously I'm one of those older generations in this topic. I got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old that I hope come home. But if they don't come home and we have it to the size that it can run itself and they just collect dividends from an operating farm, I'm okay with that too. And it would be in my mind, that's a successful transition. But I don't know if it would deem as a succession plan all the time because my kids weren't technically the CEO. They're just the chairman of the board. So I think it's getting to be an interesting conversation that we probably need to have more and more, right? Is that does it have to be the kid? And then secondly, I think, and Shout, you could answer this more on the consulting side. There's also, in my mind, an issue on the timing gap, right? By the time this son or daughter want to come home at 30 years old, some parents are 65, 70, right? If it's one of the younger ones, etc. Like, I'm sorry, I would not want to be out doing all the work on a 5,000 acre farm as a 70-year-old. I still want to be there, but I don't want to be carrying all that stress and burden myself. And so do we actually need to look at this a little different, that there's some timing gaps in between the children and the parents?
Yeah. And I mean, I would say there's a demographical gap there. We've said it before. I mean, my generation got told not to come back, and a lot of us did anyways, but there's still that gap. And then you're right. The second part is you got 2 scenarios. You got scenario where mom and dad are 70, son's 50 and never been given any of the reins. So they're both going to retire at the same time. Let's be fair.
Yep.
And then you've got the 70-year-old and the 30-year-old coming back, and there's too much of a gap. And the thought leadership, which ties into number 4 here, which is the education and mentorship, it's just not going to be there. So we're losing the thought leadership, and some don't want to come back to an empty farm. I mean, if they're coming back for the lifestyle, they want the family side. If they're coming back to the business, they don't want to get dropped on a massive enterprise that's probably too big to just start in year 1 and do everything, right?
Yep.
I want to take this moment to give you a little highlight on one of our sponsors, Maverick Ag Consulting, providing the link between primary producer agriculture and the business world. Maverick offers specialized financial and operational consulting products that allow farmers to navigate the current farming environments. Looking to take on more dirt? an expansion in equipment, or just lay down a strategic plan for the farm. Maverick provides you with specialized resources and tools to take the gut check and emotion out of decision making. If you are ready to take the next step in your farm's definition of success, reach out to maverickag.com for more details. And back to the truth about ag. Last one that was interesting with this slide, when we did this for Farmer Coach, same question with, I think we had 40 responders out of the program. Education and mentorship was one of the top two. And now in this group, it's down to number 9%. Is that interesting?
Well, so it doesn't surprise me, because those that have decided to join Farmer Coach, right, most of them they're on to their second or third succession plan on those farms, right? Like, they've been through one, they're into the next one. They're constantly looking for land, but not chasing it, right? And they're well versed on access to capital in their finance plan. Like, those three things are kind of the really the main reason that has made them into a great farm manager. So now they're going straight down to education and mentorship and maybe some access to people, because they want to continue to get better. Their whole internal theory is if I focus on education, mentorship, and network, it fixes access to land, succession, transition, access to capital. Because if I invest in myself, I'm the one that's going to fix that in my business. Like, it's just their mentality switch. So it doesn't surprise me that the answer was different in a survey versus from the Farmer Coach survey. I mean, it's always interesting to see the difference in thought process. But, my argument is that if you invest in education and mentorship, it actually fixes 1, 2, and 3 for you.
Yeah. And then I want to do a little foreshadowing that the last one on this list was subsidies and government assistance. And I know we're going to touch on it in a later question. That's why I'm foreshadowing. But right now, though these producers feel that for the next generation, subsidies and government insurance are not on the high priority.
Yeah, they rank them fourth to sixth. Yeah.
And
yeah, well, thank God. Like, if you're going to run a farm and the number one thing you're worried about is subsidies and government assistance, you have a problem.
I'm foreshadowing because I know this is coming.
And the young farmers, those under 40, which are small set part of our 417 sample, but none of them rank that as in the top 6. And sorry, in the top, none of them gave it a top score, ranked it first, which is encouraging.
It's perfect. I don't know if I'd want to see that same question asked to the farms under $1 million.
Careful, I don't want any bad press.
Did I say that out loud?
Okay, changes to ag education. What would be the most positive change to agriculture education in post-secondary? And we gave them 4 options. We gave them diploma in agriculture, entrepreneurship, and business, journeyman farmer program for trades and laborers, co-op program with on-farm experience, and then human resource management courses. Number 1, diploma in agriculture, entrepreneurship, and business. I'm actually a little surprised journeyman farmer wasn't higher than this for the trades.
Yeah, but if you add together who ranked it first and second, right?
Yeah,
it really did come in first.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, so that it's surprised. This one, the part that caught me off guard a little bit was the human resource management courses, specifically, to primary production, because first, the first thing we hear from guys at Farmer Coach is you got ideas to find more people, right? Yep. And then by session 3, it's like, how do you manage all these goddamn people? So that'll probably come up as the first 3 happen. The diploma in agriculture, entrepreneurship, and business, it surprised me that it ranked that way, just because I think there is some of that in the country a little bit, right? Like, not saying everything could always be better. It's probably a little agronomy heavy still in a lot of the universities, but it's kind of there. Where the bottom 2, journeyman farmer, obviously we don't think exists. The SciAS aren't really doing it. And the co-op programs, I mean, we found a couple, but I find that most of the co-op programs really focus on sending their kids to the life science companies, right? Like, it's way more normal to be a summer student for Bayer or Syngenta or Corteva or BASF and not to farms. And yet, if I'm one of the life science companies, I'd almost rather them go do their co-op program on the farm to understand the farm better and then go work thereafter. So I think it's a mentality shift that we really need to work on within the SciAS and within agriculture, that we're a production farm is a great place to do your co-op programs. And we've had some awesome successes with kids out of Ontario, kids out of Saskatchewan, even local kids out of the local high school. But we really didn't start focusing on this till about 3 years ago. And we've been super, super impressed with what we've been able to accomplish there. So, point 3 is the one we're focusing on the most, which then hopefully will kind of drive to more of a journeyman farmer idea to get put into the SIAST, right?
And we knew all along, when we went and presented to these schools, none of these guys saw primary producer agriculture as a viable career, let's be fair.
No.
So then the question is that on the producer side or is that on the school side for not selling this?
Well, number one, I'd say both. I always kind of, as producers, I think we maybe don't always tell our story good enough, right?
Yeah.
But I do get a little frustrated that academics sometimes like to tout themselves as being thought leaders, right? And yet we want to say agriculture needs to be here and food production is so important, but that's not always what gets pushed through the system, right? But it's a societal issue. What's the number one increase in jobs in the last 6 years? Government, not anything private. And farms are what percent of private industry in Canada? Like 1.6 or 1.9 or something. So, we need to be a pretty loud voice to make sure that people start seeing it better. But I think it's the breadth of careers within production agriculture that we need to talk about, right? Like we got a high school kid that wants to be a mechanic that's here working in the shop right now, right? You can use an agronomist. You can use somebody that loves to run equipment. You can use somebody that loves to manage people. Office jobs, right? From CFOs down to admin, right? I think that's the part we need to do a better job of in agriculture, not just saying we're looking for farm help, right? We need farm help for seeding, only taking part-time people, right? Like a lot of people, specifically local, aren't looking for part-time jobs. They're looking for full-time jobs with benefits and probably a pension. So I think there's a few things we could do to improve that too.
Was there any change in the demographics on these ones, Kent? Like age groups?
Good question. No, not really.
They were all similar across the board. Okay.
Young farmers stand out on the trades. 43% of them rank that top. So it's not a statistically significant difference, but that sounds like it means something. Yeah.
Okay, now we went the other side of it. We said the importance of more education options. So how important is it to have more educational options in the following areas? So we said finance, accounting, commodity hedging and marketing, trades, agronomy, operational efficiency, entrepreneurship, and human resource management. Now we have a flip. So the last one was entrepreneurial and business was number one. Now entrepreneur and leadership, more options, is actually second last.
So this one did catch me off guard. Just because when we're talking to people, everyone's kind of over, to be honest, if I'm having a discussion with them, they're over agronomy and those types of things. But the number one conversation usually is around how to get people and how to manage people, volatility in commodity markets, how do you, the operational efficiencies, running 24 hours, like those are kind of the specific questions I usually get when farms come up to me. So it just in kind of Kristjan's gut survey, I did not expect finance and accounting to get ranked number one.
I have job security. I'm good.
Yeah. I should probably go buy my old man a gift, right? Because when I said I was going to go, when I was switching from medicine into something else, I said, wow, I'll go take agriculture. And he's like, go take business, finance and accounting. That's going to be what you're going to need in the future. And that was kind of the discussion. So he maybe read this survey before I did years ago, but it caught me off guard, one, but two, kind of makes me proud, right? Like it's the easiest way to take emotion out of decisions is to understand your finance and accounting really well, right? Understand your cost of production, understand your break even per bushel, understand how to do a net present value on an equipment trade. And it can really take the emotion and what the neighbor's doing and whether or not your crew thinks you should have a new shop versus should you, does your wife, my wife likes horses. So we're looking at a horse or a tractor upgrade to throw some humor in there. The finance, it's everything, right? The finance and accounting is how I run the farm. It's all math. And I probably am not emotional enough sometimes.
Yeah, the interesting part is I had Sean Haney on the last podcast, and this was the one area where he says he has to be careful public speaking because when he calls out that agriculture is to be fair, pretty terrible at the finance and accounting side, he gets pushback. And I've had it too, is I've said that, you should be sending your kids into commerce, not into ag. And people get angry at that. And yet in this survey, they are 100% or 56.6% on board that finance and accounting are the areas where the next generation and themselves that need more options.
The one that my story on finance and accounting's in the US, when we were launching Global Ag Risk down there, and I was looking for accrual financial statements with redacted names, just the data. I talked to the largest accounting firm in the agriculture world in the US. So the Myers Norris Penny of the US. We couldn't get a deal done, but if we had, they couldn't get me 200 accrual financial statements for the whole states. That's embarrassing.
Well, to be fair, though, I mean, I was on a call with Dick Whitman and he called out the bigger firms from Canada and said, you guys do accrual, but how many of the statements come in accrual before you make your adjustments? And next to none. So, I mean, even though the accountants up here do it, the farmers still aren't using accrual information to make decisions.
No. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Why do some people like our, the weekly and monthly scorecard so much? Is it's based on accrual, but it takes some work, right? It doesn't just happen overnight, that transition. But yeah, I mean, I'm super happy it's first. It's just
surprising.
It surprised me, and it's going to take a while to get that one to where it needs to be too, because you got to put some time into learning that to understand how to do it correctly. It's not just do a quick 20-minute online course and you fix it, right?
The second one did not surprise me at all. Marketing and hedging. I mean, I get this all the time. And part of it is, I mean, we fought so hard to get the wheat board on and then realized that the industry itself didn't know how to market. And I'm not saying that as a derogatory term. It was just the hedging, the tools, the risk side of that. It scares most farmers I work, most farmers I talk to and most farmers I work with. It's not an area of comfort. Let's be fair.
Huge difference between U.S. and Canadian farmers on marketing too. And the time I've spent, right? Like it's pretty normal for some American farms to not have a whole bunch of storage and haul it directly into the co-op, storage facility and then hedge everything. They're way more. A higher percent of them are savvy with futures and options. We've talked about this before, Shout. Right? I've always marketed pretty aggressively, but our size has created an unintended consequence of making me focus on it way better or way more and try to improve. Just because we can't haul out 50% of our grain in a week anymore. Like it takes a half a year. So it's really made us decouple cash from futures. And it's a good thing I can sleep good at night, because the volatility in the markets of late, I don't think I'd want my wife, and sometimes I don't even want Evan and Jeff to see my hedge account.
And to be fair, everybody always asks why Jeff and I aren't involved in that. And I said, because I would rather him lose his own money.
It's interesting. You mentioned the wheat board. I think the wheat board hangover, and maybe on the other side in other areas with the supply management, but that's 10 points lower outside the prairies.
Really?
Right.
Really?
It is very important. Body hedge, right? So
I would say you're probably bang on. It's a coupling of wheat board hangover and supply management, right? Like the supply managed sectors would be a way bigger percent, obviously, of the surveys that were done in Ontario and Quebec, and maybe even a couple in Manitoba versus the other three. So that is interesting.
Yeah. Like just, you look at that number there, 48 point, let's call it 49%. It's 51% in the prairies, 14% in BC, 38% in Quebec, right? So
yep.
Yeah.
And then the trades, number 3. The only reason I find this interesting is do you believe this is what guys are thinking they want for their employees coming back, or they want for themselves?
So I think it would mainly be for the team, right?
Yeah.
But I have had some interesting conversations. I think probably when we started making up some of the questions, it jogged my mind that when I'm in conversations with farmers, I'm kind of inadvertently quizzing them on some stuff, right? And the one that's come up quite a bit with, call it you know, the farmer that's 10 to 15 years older than me, so put him in that late 50s, early 60s. You get one-on-one with them and they're like, God, I wish there was some little courses I could do in the winter on being better with the GPS and the John Deere screens and using my John Deere on my phone, right? And I can see that because, so I think Dad's 63 or 64, somewhere right in there, and like he uses my John Deere every day in growing season, right? He's on Voxer with us every day, but he's around us every day. I think if you were there by yourself and just had a couple part-timers in the summer, it would be hard to get that implemented. And yet it's not because they don't want to. It's just you know, they could go fix anything on the farm better than most young farmer and not have any downtime, but they just can't always kind of figure out the best way to attack that, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a little bit in there on that, the tech side of it.
And I think it is both, because we see it a little bit higher with younger farmers than older farmers, but also significantly higher among those who have 10 or more employees. So you got young farmers going, yeah, I could take a course or two, and then you have the larger operations saying, yeah, let's get some options for our team.
Well, and that's kind of our theory, Kent, is right, is I'm not sure why the SciAst. I sometimes think we've focused our education completely on agronomy and a little bit of business management in the universities, where I think agriculture, if you're going to do it as a career, a farm only needs one CEO, whether it's $1 million in revenue or 100 million, right? It needs a lot of really good project managers and operators. So it's like, why don't we have a 3-year or 4-year SciAS program with 3 co-op terms in there? The first year, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. Cattle, pigs, dairy, grain, all that. It's just a base year. But then after year 1, you kind of focus where you want to specialize. So if you're going to specialize in grain farming, you're going to take a lot on the tech side, the GPS, the auto steer, precision management, how to do all that with your computer, not just online, right? You're going to do a little bit of mechanical stuff so that if you didn't grow up on a farm, like, I'm sorry, but like we'll get kids out of town that have never changed a tire in their life. And it's not that they're not smart enough to change a tire. It's just that there's a lot of people that live in the city that don't even own the right socket to do that in the garage. And so you only got to show them once and they're laughing on doing a bunch of that work. But I think it's a lot more like being trained to be a plumber or an electrician or a welder than it is to go work on Wall Street.
The other thing I see is it probably is a solution for some of the succession issues. I mean, if you've got a family that's got 2 or 3 boys, and I've got one consulting client that's got 3 or 4 kids possibly coming back, it gives other options. Because like you said, there's only one CEO, but there's a whole bunch of other areas in agriculture we've gone over. And as they consolidate, it continues to get bigger, and those become full-time jobs, and you're going to need those trades.
Well, I don't like it. As a farm needs a CEO and a couple of VPs, let's call it. Like, there's no question in my mind if Bentley or Ivy wanted to not have my job, if they wanted to be one of the project managers in the future, this is what I'd tell them to take, and they would do all 3 of their co-op programs on other farms that I would specifically help get approved, right? Because they wouldn't all be in Canada. There'd be one really interesting one in Canada that does it way different than us, right? Whether that's might be a potato farm or a berry farm, or Christ, it might be an organic farm, right? Something different. Then I'd want one in the US, and then I want one overseas, and like bring back everything you learn, because they are kicking my ass at something at every farm you go to, and find it for me, right?
To be fair, I don't want your job either.
No, I know.
Okay, education category needs. So which education category is in most need of more learning, Austin? So that's what are we short on in Canada right now? Number 1, there you go. There's your agricultural trades, which goes back to your SciAS stories. Number 2, commodity marketing and hedging. 3, finance and accounting. And then a large drop off to the rest, which would be operational, agronomy, human resource, entrepreneurship, and other. So again, I love the fact that entrepreneurship and business was number 1 on the first question, the needs of the next generation. But then what do we actually need for an education program? It falls down to 4%.
I think you might be starting to explain our succession problem.
Oh, I have that feeling.
Right? We want our kids to get educated in entrepreneurship and leadership, but we don't think it's that valuable to have in the industry right now, because we don't want them to take our job too early.
But agriculture trade's number one. I don't think it's a huge shock on this one. We've said it a million times. There's nothing out there right now.
No.
You have to take another industry lead and turn them into an agriculture in order to make that work right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Marketing and hedging, I don't want to hit that one again. I mean, that one's clear. Finance and accounting, again, I've got lots of job security. And then the remainder. So we probably don't spend a lot unless you got something, Kent, on this that jumped out at you.
Well, just again, the general trend that the financial stuff, finance and accounting, tends to be a lot higher outside of the prairies. And I think that's just a reflection of that those are very capital intensive farms. You know, we do a financial survey every year. What do Canadian farmers think about their financial institutions? And you see that difference there as well. You get into a dairy farm or a greenhouse or whatever it is, those are capital intensive. And so we see that on these education questions as well.
Yeah, well, you take the volatility out of revenue, right, in a supply managed industry, then their number one thing is the utilization of capital and operational efficiencies, right? Which they don't see it as an operational efficiency. They see it as a finance and accounting. Cost reduction is the easiest way to make money.
That's a good way to put it, Kristjan.
And they're making smaller changes where the volatility in the prairies is quite significant.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to pull you away from the Truth About Ag podcast to highlight one of our sponsors, Farmer Coach, the only entrepreneurial producer coaching program in Canada that offers leadership, finance, and operational training from the dirt to the boardroom. A producer program that focuses on entrepreneurial business practices and growth. An education program that links the professional services world back to the dirt and back to production agriculture. And a mass peer group of all the participants that creates a link and knowledge of both Canadian and U.S. agriculture. For more information, reach out to us at farmercoach.ca. And now back to the podcast. Okay, government spending. We don't want the next generation to have any, but we have number one. Where should the federal and provincial budgets be spent? Farm income, insurance, and subsidies. So just to put you back down a couple pegs, they want money, but they don't want the next generation to have it.
Yeah, they don't. Exactly. They don't think it's that important, but it's the number one area government should spend money.
This one made me almost hurt. This one made me hurt. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I mean, the best part is there's only 34.5% say that, and currently it's like 70% of all agriculture budgets. So we can reduce it a little bit. Ken, was there any difference in the age demographic on this one?
No, I was gonna say not statistically significant difference on age, but we also had a category where we asked farmers, over the next 5 years, are you growing your operation? Are you staying the same? Or are you shrinking or exiting? And for that last group, the people who are getting out, only 12% said that that's top rank for them.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty consistent across the board.
And across provinces, like it's similar.
No significant differences by province. It's highest in Quebec, 48%, and lowest in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, so in my perfect world, obviously, ag transportation and infrastructure and international trade opportunities and advancement should rank 1 and 2 because I like to grow revenue to make money, not have subsidized insurance. And I always get in trouble on this one.
Oh, yeah, we're going to take a hate on your last comment right there.
Yeah, well, but let's be honest, the real reason I take hate is a lot of my grain farm buddies right away will kind of tackle my opinion on supply management. And the true capitalist in me says, yeah, I think it should be on the table to get negotiated away. But if we're going to negotiate on supply management, let's make sure we negotiate on the crop insurance subsidy at the same time because they have a lot of similarities. And let's
get rid of agri stability as well.
And then my likability goes way down. The thing is, agri stability actually costs significantly less than crop insurance, but nobody really knows that, right? And I haven't went deep into the budget for a few years, but last time I went in, it's like crop insurance was subsidized to the tune of $29 an acre across the country, like annually. So it actually is on the level with supply management, but it never gets thrown into the conversation. It's just one side doesn't like one and the other side doesn't like the other. So
your 1,400 acre farm has a $40,000 subsidy just based on their crop.
On their insurance, yeah.
So I mean
annually.
And that's the funny part is I got supply managed clients as well, and we have that discussion, and they're going to fight for their side, and the grain farmers are going to fight against it. But in the end, you're all getting checks from the government. I'm sorry. So this watch how fast we throw stones at glass houses, I guess would be the comment I want to say. But you're right. It disappoints me a bit that the transportation, the trade, any of the ways that would actually increase our ability to run our business more profitable fell down, and we were looking for government to prop us up. And I mean, some of that will be looking down at the US, and I don't like their system either. So in that end, it kind of sits there. Last two were public funded research and then education and post-secondary learning institutions. So we need better courses, but we don't actually want the budget to pay for it.
Yeah. And we don't want to pay for them either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how sometimes the mind changes from question to question a little bit.
Oh, I know. Risks from government. How much risk does the government pose to your farm business in each of the following areas? Number one, international trade at 39%. Second was environmental sustainability, so that'll be only a tax on the environment side. Third will be agriculture subsidies and insurance. And then geopolitical and war was number 4. Anything jump out here? Nothing shocks me here, especially with the environment we're in today.
Yeah, and I think international trade and geopolitics are the exact same thing in today's world.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, so you go back years and years, international trade was a problem because of pirates over the ocean. Now those pirates just sit behind desks and make illogical decisions.
Now, question for you. If we pull what's happened with the tariffs and the Trump and everything else out of this question and go back 6 to 8 months, is it still number 1?
International trade?
Yeah. You think farmers thought about it that much back then before all this happened?
Well, technically they should have, because the Russia-Ukraine war is what ran the wheat prices way up because of an international trade issue. The war itself actually wasn't affecting Canada very much, but it did really affect international trade.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think the media that Trump garners brings everything top of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different. Yeah, I mean, environment and sustainability, like let's be honest. Carney's pause on the carbon tax just dropped pumps, 17 cents? It hits the wallet really quick. Now, I wish I could use a different word other than pause on that. Yeah. Right? So there's a huge issue on what environmental rules can do to our bottom lines, and it's actually ridiculous when you look at the Global Institute report that shows we're the best at it in the world, and we're still worried about what it's going to do to our bottom line. The world should be paying for what we're doing in Canada.
Yeah. Okay, I love this one because now actually I love and hate, because technically accountants and bookkeepers number 1 and external CFO number the dead last, so I get a bit of a love-hate here. But how crucial is each specialist or advisor to your operation and profitability? Number 1, accountants and bookkeepers. Number 2, marketing and sales. 3, internal trades. Then agronomy, lenders and advisors, other farmers such as peer groups, legal representation, insurance, and then external or part-time CFO, CEO, and COO. Dead last. Yeah. Accountants and bookkeepers number 1. I don't think it surprised me probably that was up there.
No. Kent, can you tell me, on a farm with multiple employees, did this change much?
A little bit.
Did I come out of the basement is what we're asking?
No, you're still in the basement. Yeah. They're number 1 for the big farms, those with 10 employees. Probably one of the good ways to look at it. 47% were on internal trades.
So employees, they wanted stronger employees,
and
they're trying to build the internal system.
And they were also significantly higher on insurance advisors at 14% versus the 6.7 you see there.
Higher risk profile.
Yeah. So I mean, it kind of, I don't want to say it surprised me again, but it makes me happy that finance and accounting, and a couple questions back, and this one, the accountant and bookkeeper part is getting ranked as high as it is. And I mean, the reason I'll say that is when I started at MNP, we had a few incorporated farms that brought their receipts in briefcases or 5-gallon pails to find out if they made any money.
Still did.
And this is an incorporated farm, so it's not that it wasn't profitable. It was. They incorporated because they were making money. And I'm not saying that was a big percent. It was a super small percent, but it's nice to see a large chunk is really starting to value the importance of, because that's really the base of being a farm CEO, right? Is you don't need a CEO if there's no data and finance to back it up.
So how much of this do you think is driven by the industry forcing it down? So I mean, banks with the more increased lending, they've required financial statements. Like, how much of this do we believe has changed because of external forces?
So personally, I think it's changed because in 99, when I was in grade 12 and kind of had the most acres I rented back then, we were hoping for $250 of gross revenue. Now we're hoping for 700 plus.
So numbers.
So I just think that the size of the numbers have forced everybody to pay more attention, right? And I mean, even me, like every now and then I got to go look at the total fertilizer number, not just the per acre number, to remind myself how much money's flowing through, right?
Anything else on the list here jump out at either of you?
Well, the one that jumped out at me, not a surprise, but jumped out as highly significant, is 61% of women said their financial lender or advisor is really important, is the most important. And so that, I'm guessing that just connects to even though these are large farms, they're running that stereotypical, this would be a good word, model where the guy's looking after the crop and the equipment, and the woman's looking after everything else on the farm, including the financials.
Yeah, that is interesting. But you're right. Like, it is stereotypical that farm wife is the lead bookkeeper until they decide to hire somebody to help her. Right. So she gets super nervous about the finance side, right? Because it's not always getting looked at in depth. That is interesting. That's good.
Now, in these areas he's in, the industry we know today, let's take Western Canada. Are we short on any of the specialists right now? In your eye?
Well, there's a fine line between the number of specialists and the number of good ones.
That's the question I'm asking.
So 100%. I mean, I've said this for a long time, that 40 to 60-year-old, but let's back that off and kind of change it more like 30 to 50, 35 to 55. Yeah. There's a huge, we called it the brain drain, where for 20 years, everyone said, don't go into agriculture. Yeah. So I kind of use it from my dad's age to my age. Like I think there's lots of young ones coming up and there's old ones retiring, but that middle-aged sweet spot where I honestly think when from 20 to 30, your job is to do a lot of things and learn as much as you can learn, right? Yep. From 30 to 40, you start to hone your craft. And from 40 to 55 is when you can really be really good at what you do and be an expert. And I think we have a shortage of 40 to 55-year-old rock stars in a lot of these areas. I think we have, and I mean, let's just use the TPAP speakers as an example. All the best ones are 80. Yep. Right? Like I've just used it is a high level example that there's just so many that were told for so long that there's no money in agriculture, that they went into other specialties. Right. So I do think there's a shortage of really good ones.
Well, and I got two, like I look at, and not a hit on accountants because I'm an accountant, but I would say the top two accountants that we utilize for our operation are both of that age group that is higher, and there's a gap. And then, I mean, the bookkeepers, it's honestly the number one job the growing farms are having trouble finding is just a good bookkeeper. And then you go down, I mean, agronomists, we've been looking for an agronomist to have on our farm for how long? Like, I think the shortages in all these areas. Lenders, I mean, for me, I wrote a blog a week ago about how the lending institutions, I mean, client relationships are hard to come by because guys, they exit so quickly. Like you could have a banker today, he won't be your banker tomorrow, right? So.
Well, and my big thing is there's a difference between someone that just does what you ask them to do as your banker, accountant, or lawyer, and there's someone that brings you new ideas that they're learning in all the other days they're doing their job.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference, right? Like, I mean, why is Klippenstein out of Regina so good for M&P? Is because he constantly is looking for great ideas on all of his clients that he could implement on other ones. Yeah. And it's that transition of knowledge and ideas that makes an advisor great. Versus average. And nothing against, we need average too, but the great ones, the rainmakers, there's just not that many.
Yeah, you need production to get the work done, but you still need those couple that are coming up with new thought leadership, or else we might as well be using ChatGPT because there's no new thoughts coming into anything right now, right?
Exactly.
Control the increase to profitability. In each area, how much control do you have to increase profitability? I like this.
You should be happy here, Shout.
I'm happy after 10 years of preaching this from Dean and from everybody else. Capital planning and machinery, number one area to control profitability in 2025.
However,
Uh-oh.
what did my dad always say to me? Do what I say, not what I do. Right? I think that was his big line when he coached me hockey, and then I'd go watch him play rec hockey. And I would argue that most farms you talk to might say that machinery planning is the number one way to increase their profitability. I'm not always sure that's what they do.
You mean that when I do a coaching and I have 5 guys talking about building shops in 2025, is that an issue? Is that an issue? Debt restructure planning, number 2. I like that one too, because restructure used to be a dirty word that nobody ever wanted to say. Now farms are realizing that it's actually a planning and operational tool.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest opportunities in agriculture that we need to get our heads around, right? The one I always use is real estate in the cities. You know, typically if it gets to 65% LTV, you've kind of moved to an electable principal payment idea. And in agriculture, we've always, you buy the land and in 15 to 25 years, you pay it all off, right? That whatever you wanted. At the size of businesses now, I'm just not sure that's a reality if you want to grow. If your number one thing is to find land and scale, which they said on question number 2 or whatever it was, you need to get your head around unique ways to use financing to your side.
The interesting part is when I say those things, that is the number one pushback I get from the industry. So from accountants, from everybody else, is you're creating risk. Then we have a bad year. And honestly, I'm not even kidding. It's the number one pushback I get, not from producers, because producers, don't get me wrong, they push back a little, but having those discussions increases risk on your farm, and they are terrified of putting more risk onto agriculture farms.
Yeah. There's a reason a lot of accountants are accountants, not running business. It's because they focus more on decreasing risk than making money.
Number 3 was marketing or hedging. So obviously in a year like 2025, it doesn't surprise me that it's higher on the list because we all know the volatility coming. People was number 4. Again, HR being lower. And I'm guessing the size of farm probably dictated that one a bit, Kent, I'm assuming.
Yep, a little bit. It's like 16 is the average. It's 15 for $1 million to $5 million farms, and over 5 million, it jumps up to like 20, 24.
And then cost of production was number 5, which is interesting, is that we don't want to buy the capital, but we don't want to reduce our costs. Like, it's harder to reduce costs than it is to do anything else, right?
Well, and I'm glad to see that, right? They're showing that. So when years get tight, it's not back off on fertilizer. It's try to do a better job of capital allocation on your equipment and on your land, right? Great mindset to have.
Yeah. And then yield or quality of grain was dead last with at 8.6%.
Yeah. What's interesting on that one is that there's some significant difference with just the overall trend. Bigger farms, older farmers feel like they have a lot more control than others. Young farmers, if you just pop back a second, Evan, if you got
You betcha. Yep.
So if you just look at the dark green bar there and average that, for a older farm, the average would be like 26 points, and for young farmers, it's 17. For a $5 million plus farm, it's 33. So just being established, I guess, feeling less at risk, right?
I think probably 2 points, right? The older guys would have less debt, specifically on equipment, right? So they're not forced to switch. The larger farms will have really started to figure out what we call multiples, right? They can maximize the multiple on the machinery. So if you own an 80-foot drill, somewhere around 8,000 acres is where it really starts to hit its max efficiency. And if you only have 4,000, it can cause some issues. So that makes sense.
Well, in debt restructuring here, the average is 31. For $5 million plus farms is 45. Say that they've got full control over that. Yeah.
And I think that comes with a little bit of, let's call it experience and education, I believe. So by doing the consolidations and getting to that size, they would have had to have gone through these exercises where honestly, a lot of farms I work with in the coaching program, that it's still a dirty word because they've never realized the ability that it opens up for them. So let's call it a trade secret, right? Or whatever you want to call it.
Well, let's go back to the old days show, right? One of Dad's bankers way back in the day, the number one way to kind of test your farm's ability was that you got your line of credit above zero once a year. Like it's got to get above zero. And for a couple of years, Louis and I would really debate on it because I understood why it was important to him. But like, Dad, I just don't care. I only care about current ratio. As long as I got lots of working capital.
I haven't seen a zero since I started here in 2019.
Yeah. But then what we did though, is we sat down and walked through, there was a few reasons why that was happening. And the number one was that our prepaid area was getting earlier and earlier, right? So he used to have a November year end and he didn't do his prepaids till November, right? Yeah. Where now we're starting to do all these prepaids in June, July, August, September. And so there wasn't that nice little 2 months where you could pop it up.
Yeah. Well, a decade ago, it would have been a tax play. Now it's an actual margin play.
Exactly. Right. And then the other thing too is like just the amount of dollars and cents that we can have sitting in inventory that makes me comfortable with prepaids against it. So yeah, but it's just sometimes how those little rules just change a little bit, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even come to the point where, like you said, if it's sitting in a bin, we can bulge against that if we actually really needed to not sell, which goes back to the whole tariff timing and all that stuff. Is it gives you the leverage and strength to create margin.
Well, Kleinfelter's thing, he did research on farm credit years ago, right? And the only difference between the top 25% and the top 5% was timing, right? Like as they get business savvy, that's in every level of business. It's not just agriculture. There's the top 25%. They're business savvy. They make decisions. They move fast. But the only that makes the top 5% better than the other 20 is luck and timing. That's it, right? Luck is they pick the time a little bit better, and time is that they actually didn't get forced to make it in a bad time, right?
Yeah. Okay, we are hitting on the hour, guys. Are you both still good to finish through this?
Sure.
Yep.
All right. Other risks or needed policy changes. So are there any other risks to your farm or changes you would like to see in government and education? Kind of number one, government policies and programs.
Well, if we're given the opportunity to complain about the government, no decent farmer would pass that up.
No, not at all. Politics is number two. Trade is number three. Taxes is number four. Economics, environment, education, agronomics, labor, which is second from last.
So you want to know what would be interesting, and we won't have, I'm sure you don't have the detail on it, Ken, but someday in my life, I'd like to break down that 17 and a half between federal, provincial, and municipal. But it would have to be in a conversation, not just on a one-off question, because in a lot of conversations I'm having, like the feds annoy us, right? We wish the provinces would do more, but a lot of the month-to-month frustrations are actually with municipalities, local, where they're superseding the federal rules and actually making them harder. And specifically, I see this in the livestock guys, right? I got a buddy that does supply management by Hamilton. I got another feedlot guy in Alberta, and they're like, I can follow all the federal rules. And then my local municipality adds another 10 kilometers around how far they have to be to build something. So like, they're like, they actually make the rules the worse locally. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I think the feds and the provinces take a lot of heat for some of our government issues. And yet a lot of them are locally implemented that supersede, they're overarching the federal and the provincial regulations.
Yeah, and that is in the comments there. Those kinds of remarks. I believe that the predominant was federal, but that think about the timing on this study. We're doing this right at the time that during the time of the survey, Carney became the Liberal leader and called the election, right? So.
We didn't even have a federal government at the time we were doing this, technically, right? They were prorogued.
I wanted to use shit was hitting the fan, but you guys can stay politically correct on that if you like.
Yeah, so I think, so how it would shake out at other times, I'm not sure. But yeah, there were those kinds of comments about regulations that just don't make any sense. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I would say, size of farm probably dictates that as well, Kristjan. I would say as a larger scale operation, you're going to take more the rural municipality policy issues. I could be wrong. You can correct me if you want, but that's where my viewpoint is.
Well, it's one of the joys of the odd thing does get measured in acres or in revenue, right? And so if we say that for every, $1 million of revenue, you're going to have 2% of problems, it means if you got a lot more revenue than $1 million, the 2% still is that many more complaints, even though it's the exact same percent.
Yeah.
We won't get into whether or not they're warranted.
And then the last slide, guys, there's a lot of writing here, so I'm not going to go into it. Was there anything else, Kent, that came across that you wanted to highlight before we shut this down?
No, I think we've covered it well. Really appreciate all the farmers that took the time to do the survey. That's what makes all of this possible is participation of farmers, and it's certainly important to us to have people willing to share their voice and make sure that what they think is getting shared with others. You'll be using this with government, etc. So,
well, that was the other big thing. The big thing for me was it gives me at least gives me a lot of information to take back to the coaching program of like finance and stuff. It's easy for me to float over it because of my background. So I think the guys want to focus on, like Kristjan said, we focused on HR because that was what we were hearing from our group. But now I'm looking and saying, well, our group's not quite the same as the norm, right? So it was more, okay, finance and accounting, marketing, like there's other areas that we probably need to shift a bit. So that's why I wanted it done, and that's why it was great to have it. The other one is we like to make fun of it on the subsidy side and all that other stuff, because I still like to see it. And Hebes and I go back and forth on this of whether there should be, subsidies for the current tariff situation, stuff like that. And we have different opinions, and that's great. But this at least shows what let's call it an average sample across all of Canada, which usually we're just looking at Western. So it was great for me to look at.
Well, and I think one thing too that I would really encourage listeners, right? Send us questions that you think should be on surveys, because we're probably not done doing them, right? The one reason I was super interested in the collaboration, Kent, is like I said, a lot of surveys are pushed through by the big life science companies or machinery companies, etc., or stats can. And I don't always believe they always get the best answers, right? Because number one, some of them are government, and number two, some of these are huge companies that farmers are a little nervous, are just trying to get more information to take more of our money, right? Like it's called a spade and shovel. Where we had, there's none of that. It was a matter of Evan and I talking one day to be like, Jesus, every now and then we need a way to make sure we're not in our own echo chamber of him and I and Jeff talking, and then just our top farmer coach people. It's like, yeah, but part of the reason they're in farmer coach is they think like us already.
Right.
And so are we, when I'm talking to a bureaucrat or a politician or the CEO of a company, am I jaded too much? And it was like, how do we ground ourselves without just taking a whole bunch of time and kind of doing it that way? And it was like, well, why don't we start getting in a bit of a habit of doing some sort of a survey? And so what I would urge is, like, please send us questions, send us things around ideas that you're wondering, so that we can start a list, so that when we do the next one or the next two, eventually we can start building that out. Right. And if you're with a group of farmers, a marketing club or a cost of production club, I would say farms do too many surveys, but I actually see that there could be a lot of value in it, depending on, especially if we get working together in a collaboration, right?
Right. So go to stratusresearch.com and sign up.
Sign up to do the surveys
as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it caught me off guard, some of the stuff, but like that's kind of where the discussion happened, was, this echo chamber, and how do we pull information and not just pull it from StatsCan or their most recent life science company survey. Let's have our own, right? And we could see some of the stuff from Real Ag from Sean, right? So now you can correlate, and it turns into good discussions. I mean, I was talking to Andrew Shear the other day, and I brought up a few of the points, right? And it's like, no, it's not just Christian's opinion, right? Like, this is a pretty good survey of what I deem the farms that are going to get us to the 2% productivity increase.
When I worked in the South, in the U.S., in the Bible Belt, there was a sign in the boardroom that said, "In God we trust. All others bring data."
I like it.
That's good.
All right. Thank you very much, Kent, for jumping on with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks again, Kristjan, for your viewpoints that are going to get us lit up again. I appreciate it. And that is the truth about ag. Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.